Trump is now trailing some Democratic presidential hopefuls in a state that he absolutely owned in 2016. We got to talk about that. Also, is a medical debt relief plan a fool's errand or a great move by Senator Bernie Sanders?
Team Rising is here to take on those topics and more. Estuardo Rodriguez is a principal at the Rabin Group, and Holly Turner is a Republican strategist. She previously worked for the Trump White House at the U.S. Small Business Administration. Welcome, guys.
Great to see you guys.
You guys too.
Good Labor Day weekends?
Very good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, lots of sun and fun and all that stuff. Now back to reality. Cold, harsh reality of our political climate. So, okay, this poll out of Utah was very, very interesting. It found that, and look, okay, all the caveats in the world, it's really far out, don't take these general election matchups too seriously. However, found several of the Democratic candidates, in particular Cory Booker and Bernie Sanders, beating Donald Trump in Utah. Holly, what did you make? What do you make of this? What's going on
here? First of all, just like you said, caveat.
Yeah.
I mean, there are just so many things going on, and I would like to see some follow-up polling just to see if there's anything wrong. But
yeah.
I mean, look, we can't deny that the demographics are changing in Utah. I mean, Salt Lake City is one of the fastest-growing cities in the country. They have adopted a lot of liberal policies, so that dynamic is changing. It's concerning. I mean, that's been a Republican stronghold. The whole state has been for years. But
it's one of the most solidly Republican states in the entire country.
Look, it doesn't help that Mitt Romney is, can't get on board with the president. I mean, and the people of that state really appreciate him and they respect him. So their leadership is kind of telling them, let's look for another candidate. In the end, I expect the president will still win. But I worry about the down ballot races, and are we going to lose some congressional seats? Are there some that we really should have that we're not going to be able to take back just because the energy is not there to support the president? That really can impact those races.
I mean, Mia Love in the last midterm was a casualty of this. So,
and that was maybe the closest congressional race in the entire. It was certainly one of the closest congressional races in the entire country.
Right. I think we're going to also see something interesting here, because while we look at stats, polls like that, we also know that Joe Walsh is out there. And so what are the indicators that going into a primary, assuming he actually gets to the primary, but what are the indicators there? If Utah, according to this poll, is interested in a third party candidate, the Democratic candidate still polls in the high 30s. It's still not going to be enough. But what happens to split the party in the states can be really interesting, and what impact that has on Election Day when people either decide not to vote at all, assuming they're a Republican voter, or they close their eyes, pinch their nose, and vote for the Democrat or third party.
Yeah. I mean, we had Evan McMullin last time around, right? And Utah was one of the states that people talked about because it is different, right? There is a different sort of, there's a certain moral code there. There's a certain actual conservative family value thing that's very important in this state. And so there was a lot of discussion around Evan McMullin and whether that was the state where he could win.
Right.
It didn't pan out.
And it didn't pan out. And he's from that state. And and I think when you describe the Utah electorate, especially on the Republican side, it's traditional, right? So they like things to be predictable. It's not just the values and the principles, but it's, why are you tweeting? They're very uncomfortable with that. And so while the policies that the president has implemented his whole administration has implemented may be in line with what they appreciate and what they like, it's that personality that just goes so against their traditional values.
And to underscore that point, it continues even in the state. He's more popular with white men. The women continue to poll very low.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. Something else that we're just learning about that we wanted to get both of you guys' thoughts on is Bernie Sanders is teasing a plan, hasn't laid down all the details yet, but Estuardo, to cancel the $81 billion in outstanding medical debt that exists. And of course, medical debt is a massive contributor to family bankruptcies. I mean, this is the thing for a lot of people who are living close to the wire, or who even aren't living close to the wire, that completely sends them over the financial cliff. What do you think of this idea?
Well, see, the thing is, this is it's all tied together with just universal health care, right? Obamacare was born also out of the idea that people are in the cycle of debt because of healthcare needs, and emergency rooms are often used as the primary healthcare service for families and children. So I don't, while it's coming from Bernie, so everyone thinks, oh my God, this is crazy, but a lot of the developed nations in the world currently have systems where there is a basic healthcare plan to avoid the kind of debt. Every American right now, on the average, $10,000 worth of healthcare debt alone. Expenses across the country on healthcare services are in the trillions. So to cancel 21 billion or
81 billion.
81, I'm sorry, I missed
81
the number,
billion.
but 81 billion. I mean, that's a fraction. That's a fraction. So how he gets it done and actually gets paid for is a whole other debate. But the concept by itself is really something that is all packaged together with the fact that Americans cannot take care of their basic needs because of all the burdens tied
but
to
Holly, I mean, there
medical
has to be other solutions to this than just canceling debt and like making something up. And while I don't think anybody disagrees that there's problems with surprise medical bills and the way that cycle of debt continues, there has to be other ways to solve that.
Right, absolutely. So transparency in billing is huge. And look, that is available, but you have to be proactive about it. I've personally experienced that having my first son without maternity coverage, right? I had to go to the hospital, I had to sit down, and I had to come up with a payment plan, and it took me a while to pay for it, but I negotiated a rate, I shopped around, that's how it worked. So if we make that more of a mandatory thing, that pricing needs to be more transparent. But look, the irony in this whole debate is that Republicans are the ones that want catastrophic insurance policies that keeps people from getting in major debt in the first place, but we're not allowed to have them now. We have to have these low deductible, fully comprehensive policies, and it's very unfortunate because it punishes people who would otherwise be able to have their medical bills covered. The big, catastrophic, surprising medical bills, you have a deductible. Maybe it's $5,000, maybe it's $10,000, but that's better than $100 or plus $1,000 in medical bills. And then lastly, look, this is what bankruptcy is for. This is why we have bankruptcy. Sometimes, you know what? Life just deals you a bad hand, and you try to get out of it, and it doesn't work. Right. That's why we have bankruptcy.
Well, but
it's an important thing, and this is where our legal system is. It's a gift. It's not fun to go through, but after you go through that, 7 years later, you've rebuilt yourself, and it's clean and it's gone.
The issue is that there currently exists a prohibition or a higher scrutiny of healthcare debt. That's what Bernie Sanders was actually talking about when he launched it.
It's a means-based, but everything in bankruptcy is
But
means-based.
here's the thing. I mean, look, first of all, bankruptcy can ruin lives. I mean, that kind of financial stress literally is one of the contributors to the suicide epidemic that we're seeing in this country. I mean, this is a very serious thing, right? And I think what Sanders, in essence, is saying here is this debt is fundamentally unjust because our healthcare system is so disgustingly wired around profit instead of care that this just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely. That's the message. So I think you're going to hear a lot of the pundits, the conservative pundits, blast this as some socialist agenda, but this is a conversation that Republicans have also had with Democrats for over 20 years. How do you provide healthcare services, whether it's a flex spending card or whether there's another incentive plan, a bankruptcy mechanism to help families, but ultimately it's not working. And you have Republicans by and large focusing on repealing ACA, making sure that people don't have coverage that are basic needs, and offering no real solutions. And so Bernie, at the very least, is pushing this forward as a topic, and hopefully Congress will start looking at it seriously.
All right, we want to get to more with you guys. Stick around. We'll be right back with more from Team Rising.